Hello and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham, and once again, I am bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with the genre, but had their life changed by it in a major way. And today on the show, someone who has come up many, many times on this podcast. It has taken me a very long time, and actually it's taken a few people a very long time to convince him to be on this show, from the legendary Jailcell Recipes, the great Robbie Reid, a.k.a. English Robbie. It's like one of those bands like Bush, where in Canada they were called Bush X. Robbie Reid is Robbie in the UK, but in America it's English Robbie. More on that in 1 second. But first, if you want to get in touch with me, head over to the email address turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is run by my brother and show producer and guest booker extraordinaire, except this one. As I said, this was by myself and some other people, Tristan Abraham, and you get the message to me. Thank you, Tristan, my lovely brother, for all the hard work you do for this show. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at @LeftForDamian. There's a YouTube page, a TikTok page, a Facebook page, an Instagram page, all for Turned Out a Punk. Those can be found at Turned Out a Punk on those platforms. Check them all out. If you want to support the show, tell all your friends about it. I play in a band. We are called Fucked Up. You can find out more information about us over at fuckedup.cc. We are currently in the UK right now, maybe in Liverpool tonight when you're listening to this. Who knows? Head over to fuckedup.cc and find out where we are and come see us play a show or two, and I'd love to see you. You can also find out about our new record, Another Day. If you want to get a copy of Another Day on the Turned Out a Punk limited edition color, head over to Emissions Records for that while they last. And that is it. All right, on to today's show. As I said off the top on the show today, a legend, someone who I've been trying to get on the show forever, someone who's come up. If you go back and you listen to the Geoff Rowley episode, listen to any episode with someone from the UK, this guy's going to come up because Robbie Reid is the GOAT, one of the greatest vocalists of all time. Like I really do think that this guy shaped UK hardcore. And the way we look at UK hardcore as it's happening right now, one of the great scenes, I guess, country-wise, that's exploding in the last few years, or has been exploding for years now, but the UK. And I think this is kind of the proto of that scene, Jailcell Recipes. Robbie moved to America a long time ago. We talked about all this on the show. You'll hear the whole story. But this is a guy who changed the music there. Him and people in Jailcell Recipes, this leads to Voorhees, which leads to Cold Ones, which leads... Anyway, I talked about this a lot on this show, and I think we talk about it even on this episode today. The reason Robbie is finally coming here to Turned Out a Punk is because Jailcell Recipes are having their discography treatment done at long last. On the venerable First Strike Records, you can pick up, I think as of now, the Jailcell Recipes Artifacts for an Empty Tank World is available now. There's lots of various colors and printing and pressing variations, and you can find out more information over at the First_Strike_Records Instagram page, as well as checking lots of local distributors. It looks like Rough Trade's got this. There's a Japanese pressing as well. This band's amazing. Like I've loved Jailcell Recipes for a very long time. Very scrappy, U.S. informed, northern British hardcore. It's awesome, and I'm glad this band's kind of getting out there, because I feel like this is one of those bands that's kind of fallen through the cracks. I think a lot of the marketing around this record is the fact that this is kind of like one of the last unknown chapters. But if you were in the UK, or if you were even around at that time, you knew about Jailcell Recipes. Like when I had that episode with Pinhead Gunpowder a couple weeks ago, the last thing Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day and Pinhead Gunpowder said to me was, "Do you know the band Jailcell Recipes?" And then we talked about Jailcell Recipes for like another 20 minutes, because Jailcell Recipes took Green Day on tour. They went on tour with Youth of Today. They played with Gorilla Biscuits. They played with Naked Raygun. Anyway, we talk about all this shit in a second, so you're going to hear it all. I don't know why I'm hyping it up anymore. I'm just excited that this is finally happening. That's it. Check out Robbie Reid and Jailcell Recipes on First Strike Records. Get this reissue while it's available, because I don't think it's going to be available for very long. There's also going to be a show in celebration of the release of this, which is going to be happening in November. There's going to be links to all this stuff in the description as well. So that is it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the great English Robbie, a.k.a. Robbie Reid, on Turned Out a Punk. Robbie, finally we're fucking doing this.
Okay, it said okay on the screen.
This is taking years.
I know, and it's been a long trip, you know what I mean? And we're still tripping, so, but all right.
Well, I feel like, I think if I had done this when I originally asked you to do this years ago, I don't think I would have been as prepared as I am for this thing today. Like, I feel like I've amassed a lot of stories about you, stories about Jailcell Recipes and stuff. So I feel like, this has been building up for me for a long time. So I'm glad.
I'm glad you know, because I've forgotten most of it.
Well, let's see if I can jog your memory. Robbie, this has got to start off the way they all start off, which is, how'd you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across it?
I had it. This is going back. There was a kid up our street in Liverpool where I grew up, in Old Swan in South Road. I was a little kid, like 7, 8, 9 years old. And there was a kid up the street called Danny Ayres, right? He was from the Ayres family. He lived up the street, Danny Ayres. And he was a weird kid. And I was like, why is this kid so weird? And I got friendly with him. And he was a punk rocker, you know? And he's like, hey, come in, listen to this. And I think he played me Carry On Oi. Got that Gary Bushell compilation. He played me Carry On Oi, and then he played me some Crash records. And he was like, he had a guitar, and he's like, check this out. And he'd play like 2 chords. Like, God rest his soul, he's dead now. He went down the wrong path and got mixed up in drugs and whatever. But he was the reason I got into punk rock, was Danny Ayres, because he was the weirdo on the street. And I wanted to be Danny Ayres' weirdo friend. That was 1979, 1980, Liverpool, when everybody would beat the shit out of you, but having the wrong shoes on. And we're walking around with spiky hair and tight pants, you know? So that was many million years ago.
A lot of like punk bands got served when they went and played in Liverpool. I've kind of heard, right? Like,
it was violent. It was a violent town. The football was involved, you know. The poverty was involved. The working class system was involved. Like, it was definitely like it was a crazy town. There was a lot of drinking. I don't know about the drugs back then, but there was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of drugs. A lot of drinking. A lot of money struggles, you know, a lot of wife beating. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it was back then, I suppose, you know. Just a poor city, a poor dock city, you know.
It's where I got beat up on stage.
Liverpool?
Yeah.
No, I thought that was Sheffield.
No, Liverpool. We got chased out of Sheffield by the Sheffield Blades.
Okay.
Their crew, or their firm. But no, I got beaten up like off the stage at Liverpool Sound City in the middle of our set. In a big festival, like lots of people there too. It was wild. It's a tough town, like you're saying.
Yeah, welcome to Liverpool. But it's kind of funny now because I go home once a year, twice a year if I can. And it's definitely mellowed out. It has a reputation now, which is like a little better than it was. It's not as crazy as it was. There's still an attitude, but it's not as crazy. It's not as, there's a little bit more, how would you say, a little bit more, not necessarily money, but the Scousers definitely have a chip on their shoulder now. Like, we're better than the rest of England. Like, there's a quote saying, we're Scouse, not English, you know? And then the Scousers from Liverpool live up to that, you know? We're Scouse, not English, you know?
Yeah, it's like Texas in America.
Yeah. But Scouse and Texas, two different,
Yeah.
you know?
Very different vibes, but the same sort of like independence to the rest of the country kind of mentality I've found. And very much like a distinct culture. Like the accents, obviously the accents are different everywhere, but like it seems like there is
Well,
this sort of,
it all boils down to the way I've figured it out is the music scene, the fashion scene, and the football scene, right? Because originally Liverpool docks, way back when, docks was where all the work was, and all the imports came through the docks. So Liverpool was flourishing. And then they built the Manchester Ship Canal way back in, I don't know, 1800s. They built the Manchester Ship Canal. So a lot of the ships coming into the country would avoid the docks and go down the Ship Canal and then drop off the loads into Manchester. So a lot of Liverpool people were thinking that Manchester was stealing their business, you know? And then that pissed a lot of people from Liverpool off because they're taking our jobs, they're taking our, you know, our money, they're taking our livelihoods because all the imports are going to Manchester through the Ship Canal and getting dropped off there. So the docks kind of plummeted a little bit then. And then obviously with the football's huge in Liverpool and Manchester with the four biggest teams in England, United City, Liverpool, and obviously the mighty Everton. I just have to put that one in. The mighty Everton, the mighty Blues.
up the toffee.
Up the toffees indeed. And then the fashion scene, obviously, you know, with the Manchester guy, like the Liverpool guys being super fashionable and thinking they would like, you know, the Kings on the Mountain with the new clothes and all that. And then the Manchester guys doing the same thing. And then the music scene, you know, Liverpool with the Beatles, the yada yada, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Mersey Beat, all that. And then moving on to the Hacienda, then you have your Stone Roses and your Oasis and all that. So there's always a big divide between Liverpool and Manchester and who's the best, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I always think it flourishes because it's the north and not the south. You know, because the guys from London think they're the best and they're the most fashionable and they have the best music. And the old, is it Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels with the Southern Fairies and the Northern Monkeys? That's the quote from the movie, Southern Fairies, Northern Monkeys. And people still say that. I go to London. Where are you from? Oh, I lived in America for 26 years. Where are you from originally? I'm originally from Liverpool. Oh, Northern Monkey, you know? Or if you're sitting in Liverpool in a bar or at a show or something, and there's a guy from down south there, oh, where are you from? I'm from Essex or whatever. Oh, Southern Fairy. And it's just a tickle. It's just a joke, you know what I mean? And that's how you'd identify. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a laugh. So
It's interesting though when you look at how that plays out in music and like over the years, like you're saying, like obviously the Beatles being Liverpool's sort of like most notable export, but like the fact that Liverpool and I guess up north in general had more of sort of the hardcore scene. Like when I first went to England around 99, there was like a lot of talk about like there's not much of a hardcore thing as much. Like there's stuff in London obviously popping off and there were like little bands here and there, but everyone's like, oh, up north there's a lot more stuff happening. And I guess like being a fan of stuff, be it Jailcell Recipes or Voorhees, like most of the bands you heard of that were playing hardcore were kind of like the bands coming from up north, and there was like bands from London, but it was not necessarily always the same sort of thing.
true. I think again because it was a little bit more like the northern guys had less in the real world to kind of like London, you had like down south, you went to work, you had some kids, you got a wife, you settled down. North, there was none of that. You couldn't afford a house, you couldn't afford a wife, you couldn't afford any kids. So you were still like young at heart, so to speak. So I think the scene flourished through that. You know what I mean? Because there's still 25, 30-year-olds grasping onto punk rock. But again, it was all over the country at the time. I'm trying to think of bands from down south. What was Tony's band called?
Fabric?
Fabric. But before Fabric, he was in a straight edge band.
Yeah, what are they called? Fuck. Are they on that comp with the football comp that Chase Kilvo put out? Armed or maybe it's Armed with Anger put out. It's got like some football player on the cover.
It was all the chance, wasn't it? His 40s is on that though, aren't he?
I think Voorhees is on that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're saying, like you can't even think of that many bands from London, in the same sort of way that there were a lot. It's just even as a fan of stuff, like a lot of the labels were based out of North, and
yeah, I think London was that ahead of itself as well. Then when the '77 punk rock thing died, the punk rock thing died in London because it was more of a fashion thing, and that shit disappeared. And people are doing all that shit now with the Rebellion Festival and all that shit. Still like, oh, it's all back. Well, to us, it never went away.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all these people are claiming all this shit, and I'm like, well, where were you in the '90s when this shit was dead and buried, and there was the Damned had played Liverpool and 20 people would show up, and now you're playing Rebellion and there's 3,000 people paying £50 a head. Like, I'm like, sorry.
Yeah. When we first went to England on our very first tour, like there was hardcore stuff, there were punk bands, people were still doing shows. So I don't mean like, but just compared to like what we thought it was going to be, it was kind of a ghost town. Like I could totally see how there'd be 30 people showing up to a damn show.
Yeah.
There weren't, like you guys had long broken up. Voorhees had broken up. Walk the Plank had just kind of broken up. I think it was pre-SSS forming. So it was like there was like not a lot of bands, especially doing hardcore stuff. No one doing traditional kind of like oi British punk English stuff then. Like that was
like a few who never there's a band from Birkenhead called Instant Agony.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instant Agony have never, ever, ever, ever changed. And they've been doing the same thing since 1979, maybe even earlier. And they've been playing in front of 20 people and getting paid a 12-pack of beer for a show 60 miles away. And they've never changed. And they don't give a shit. They're like, this is what we do. And they don't care, And they're all in their 50s, late 50s, early 60s. Hockey Homebrew. Steve Hockey Homebrew is the singer. And he's got he's fully sleeved, but they're all blue because he's been getting tattooed since like 1979. And he's the same dude, So there's little kind of bands like that who've always done it and never really went anywhere and never got any recognition,
Mm.
And people always say like, oh, well, yeah, the Damned, the da-da-da-da, and 77 Punk. And I'm like, Instant Agony, never had any kids or whatever or claim to be anything, but just that's what they dug and that's what they do,
Yeah, like true lifer kind of thing. But like you're saying, it was very unfashionable to be like a punk hardcore kid in England at a certain point.
Oh, 100%. 100%. See, that's why we picked up skateboarding, Maximum Rock and Roll number 6 or number 9. I can't remember. They had like an issue of like bands that skate. And we were hanging out, buying Maximum Rock and Roll from Probe Records in Liverpool. And we picked up this one issue. I can't remember if it was issue number 6 or issue number 9. and it was like bands that skate. We were like, skateboarding, it's so anti-fashion. This is like 82. Skateboarding came along in England in 79, 80, and then disappeared. It was a fad. It was a hula hoop. It was a hacky sack. It was a fad. And the fact that it was so unfashionable, like punk rock in 82, we were like, we want to do this. You know, we want to ride skateboards. So we all got skateboards, and the rest is history, you know?
I guess the Rivals have a song about skateboarding, but there's like very little kind of reference to it in early British punk rock or DIY singles and stuff that I can think of. I'm trying to think of like some old, like pre, like hardcore punk rock songs about skateboarding.
In England,
Yeah, in England, I think the Rivals have one, right? Skateboarding in the
I don't
UK or
know.
something.
You see, the skate rock band for me in the early mid 80s was the Stupids.
Mm.
You know, the Stupids came along, Tommy Stupid, they all rode skateboards, and everybody laughed at them. We used to go to shows. We used to go to shows in like Nottingham and the Mermaid in Birmingham, and then Dig from Earring Records used to put a lot of shows on in Nottingham, like all dayers, and there'd be like 10, 15 bands, and the Stupids would play. And all the punk rockers would be drunk on the cider, and they'd be screaming at the Stupids, why are you trying to be Yankees? You know?
Yeah.
And then Tommy was just like, well, fuck you. And then I guess he grew up over here, or he grew up in Canada or something. So he had like a weird accent. Like he had like a mishmash of an accent. So he had like a half English accent and a half like American or Canadian accent. So people would rag on him then as well. They'd be like, why you talk like a Yankee? You know, but that's just, he grew up there, you know? So, of course, he's going to talk like where he grew up. But they couldn't figure it out, you know? I nearly got into a fight with, I don't want to mention any names or bands or whatever. But there was this one crusty kid. We played in Middlesbrough. And there's this one crusty kid with dreadlocks. Same situation. We're on stage, we're playing. And he's coming up to us and he's all drunk. And then he's saying, why you want to be Yankees? Why you want to be Yankees? I'm like, whatever. Just let us get on with the show, you know? Let us play, whatever. And then he's drunk and being an idiot. And then 10 years later, it turns out he's got a shaved head and X's on his hand. And he's in a band 200 miles away, you know?
Yeah.
And then someone said, oh, yeah, this dude used to be a crusty dude in Middlesbrough. I'm like, I remember that dude. And I remember I remember that there was a little bit of going on at that show. And there he is preaching to the unwashed.
Well, I think, and you guys might even play this show too, but like when Walter was on the show talking about how much shit from various people, and there's like a legend about like I guess Doom, maybe it's not Doom, but someone giving them shit at a show like that they played one time. I don't know if this is just like legend over reality type thing, but
Well, there was a lot of stiff back then because of like the clean kids from New York coming over, you know, and then the crusty kids drinking cider in the back alley, you know. So there was always that stigma back then, and then there was always the stigma of the straight edge kids, you know, and the crusty kids, and there'd always be a fight in the crowd, and you know, Slapshot would play, and they'd play straight edge in your face, and then all the crusty kids would get up and want to fight with the straight edge kids, and the skateboard kids who drank or smoked would be in the middle, and you know, I mean, the skateboard kids, it was just I guess it was just timing because there was no divides and there was no like bastardization at the time. Everybody was one. Everybody paid £2, and everybody wanted to go to a gig and jump around like teenagers or early 20-year-olds. You know,
yeah, and
that's the way I think about it.
it's very fashiony. Like I think you sometimes forget how, because now it's I think a lot less so, but like it's amazing how many people come on here and talk about how I think Todd actually from FYP was just saying to me that he was not allowed to be in this sort of straight edge hardcore youth crew band because he wasn't going to wear Nikes. And there was
Yeah.
talk of maybe buying him Nikes so he could be in the band.
But again, you look at it now and you think that's absolutely ridiculous. But you think about it back then, and because it wasn't so bastardized and there was no punk rock museum in Las Vegas, you know, it kind of you kind of have to do it, you know. You get laughed at if you showed up at a show with the wrong colored t-shirt on. But again, that was the time, and that was, as I say, because it wasn't as humongous as it is now. You know, it was still cliquey, very cliquey, and very small, and everybody knew each other. You know, and everybody was still running around in the same little circles as they were. But now it's escalated 30 years, so obviously it's going to evolve. You know, for the good or the bad, however you look at it. You know, I still go to basement shows, and I'll still like grit me teeth about going to the punk rock museum in Las Vegas. You know, I don't want to do this. And you know, or the Descendants are playing. I'd love to go, but I'm not paying $50. You know, like, so I don't know. Am I old and bitter, or am I wiser? Who the fuck knows? You know.
Well, it's amazing where it went, and like you're saying, it's so small and everybody knows everybody, and then you look years later, like the bands we're talking about before the show, where they went, or the people at these shows, what they wound up doing. Like it just becomes, like you're saying, exponentially bigger at a certain point, and but it still like retains that kind of like it draws interesting people. Like you're at a basement show now, there's going to be some interesting kids there, way more
Yeah, and you
interesting.
still know people, or you do know people, or you see people. And what's up with this dude? Oh, he's got 5 kids, and he wears a suit and tie now. You know, he sold all his records, and you know, he drives I don't know, a fancy car. You know, or well, what's up with this dude? Oh, he's got a man cave, and it's got all the Misfits records ever, and he owns $10,000 worth of old skateboards. You know, and it's like sports memorabilia, or you know, has it turned into that? You know,
Well, you look at Steve Aoki slabbing that Gorilla Biscuits record, like sealing it in plastic, um, or like any number of records that people are doing that with now, and you're like, yeah, I feel like maybe that is the final stand of this thing becoming just a commodity as opposed to like sort of this active piece of culture. And I guess like you're saying, now there's museums that are holding it, but I think but also like you said, there's still basement shows and there's still kids that have
yeah.
nothing to do with that stuff that are still drawing power and inspiration from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it kind of is bigger than any box you put it in.
Han Solo, everybody's Han Solo and everything. But I
What
see kids on the street with dogs. I see kids on the street with dogs with crash tattoos on their faces. You know, hobo kids riding trains. You know, and I'll give them a couple of bucks if I've got it. And then people are like, "Why are you giving that kid money?" And I'm like, "Because he's kind of he's rebelling against what everybody in the ivory towers want to tell him to do." And I'm like, more power to him. You know, I kind of like that. Like the spirit is still there, no matter what. If it's a basement show, if it's having a dog on a leash, you know what I mean. If it's riding a train, like it goes back. It goes back before punk rock. It goes back to the '60s, the '50s, whatever. You know, I meet younger kids and they say, "Well, punk rock this," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, punk rock is more of a music thing, and I go back to like an ideal, like Little Richard, MC5, like even that, like the Who. You're going to drive a Rolls Royce into a swimming pool? Punk rock wasn't even invented then, but the ideology and the brain wave was still there. We want to rebel. We want to put the finger up, you know.
But I think punk is also where that becomes ridiculous to do. And it's like the place where the goal is no longer to be in a position to drive a Rolls Royce into a swimming pool. Like it becomes just putting on a show in a basement or putting out a record
Yeah,
or
yeah. It's spending all your rent money on pressing your own 7 inch, and then taking your own 7 inch to a basement show and having people basically put change in the bucket to get in the show, and then spending $1 on the 7 inch, and then you putting the change and the dollars all into the gas tank to get home at 5 in the morning, and you have to get up and go to work at 8 in the morning to do it all again. That's the commitment, I think, like the DIY ethic. Like you can go through all your different genres now. Oh, emo, peace punk, crusty punk, straight edge, blah, 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 blah. But I think it all boils down to DIY. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, like
Like,
a band like no matter what the band sounds like, it's sort of this idea that unites everyone where you're doing it in service of something larger than trying to make it, quote unquote, whatever that is.
mm-hmm.
Like you're just doing it because this is what you do. And you're doing it in
Yeah,
service to this thing that's greater than you, known as punk, be it screamo or like you're saying straight edge or mosh
yeah.
metal or like whatever you describe that as, but you're doing it because of that, not because you're going to wind up selling millions of records and driving Rolls Royces into pools.
Yeah, signing to Sire and saying he invented punk rock,
Yeah.
a la the Ramones.
I think there's so many people that kind of do it. Like it's amazing how many of these people feel that they were the end of this thing. Like punk rock stops with me and my
Yeah,
generation.
yeah.
And it's like, no, like that you're missing the whole point if you think that you're the end of this thing.
Oh, 100%. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's 20 people at a dance show in 1985 because nobody cares anymore, you know? Or the people that cared in the 70s have moved on. But then the kids that care and are still interested and still involved are stuck around, but they're not going to see the Damned. They're going to see the newer band who are more involved, and they don't have to knock on Dave Vanian's dressing room door to talk to him because the singer of the band's hanging out with the crowd, you know? Like that kind of thing. And there's certain things that, like, we played with Naked Raygun, right? Way back. We played with them in front of 1,100 people in London. This is in 1990, maybe 91. I can't remember. But we played with them the night before in Nottingham. And the venue was tiny, and there was probably 90, 100 people there. And they were super nice. They had like a case of beer. And at the time, they had a case of beer, and they were like, "Oh, you want that case of beer? We don't want it. We got to go." And we were like, "Dude, case of beer, amazing. We're rich," you know? So, and there was only two of us that drank. So it took us like a week anyway to drink a case of beer. But we get to London the next day, and it's a whole different scenario. There's 1,100 people there, and then we just want to we load in. We want to put our shit somewhere. So we're like, okay, and then we knock on the door, and it's Naked Raygun's dressing room. We're like, "Hey, how you doing? How was the show last night? You get here okay? You drive down here okay? Yeah, everything's cool. Can we leave our shit in here? We want to go get some food." They're like, "No, this is our dressing room." were like, you guys were nice as pie last night. Now you're being pop stars because it's a big show. Like, so it was Jailcell, Napalm Death, and Naked Raygun. This story goes down in history because they've done the same thing to Napalm Death. And they put all the stuff in like the corridor by the dressing room. And I guess somebody had gone backstage and stole Shane's bass.
Oh, fuck.
So they stole his bass out of the corridor. And he's not a small dude. So he's running up and down this corridor in his thick Birmingham accent going, what the fuck? Somebody stole my bass. So that story went down in history, you know? And the show was crazy. There was 1,100. We had to play in front of 1,100 people. I felt like I was at fucking Woodstock or Glastonbury or something. Because we play in front of 25, 30, 40 people, you know, on an average night and have a good time. But 1,100 people, I was like, say hello to the people in the back.
It, it's wild during that period. There's so many like random shows that happen in London, and I obviously a huge city, but like that seemed like they were huge, or at least the legend of these shows being packed. Like the Gorilla Biscuit show there apparently had tons of people there. Gauze, right, played the show infamously in London with Fudge Tunnel. 87, I think they played that show. So I guess it's
Okay.
a few years earlier, but it just, I don't know, just like where were, like 1,100 Naked Raygun fans. You're not getting that in
Well,
New York
that's it.
City.
We met the guy in the afternoon who promoted this show. And he was just a college student from London. Didn't really know much about music, but had been approached to put on Naked Raygun. And back then in England in the 80s and early 90s, you used to get a grant off the government to cover your next 3 months of college, right? So it'd pay your rent, it'd buy you food, and you'd have to pay it back. And he said he just got his grant, and he said, I just put all my money into this show. So if I don't make money back, I don't know how many people are going to show up. If I don't make any money back, I'm basically on the street. I'm basically on the street and hungry for the next 3 months. So even he didn't know. There was no advance tickets. Everyone was paying on the door. And 1,100 people showed up. And I didn't even know Naked Raygun even released 1,100 records. Never mind 1,100 people in London.
Yeah.
It was a strange one. Every music fan, I guess, in London that night showed up to Naked Raygun. The Hackney Hell Crew were there. Bunch of squatters,
Yeah.
sitting there drinking cider, a bunch of squatters. Hackney Hell Crew's here. Watch out, they might want to fight you. What are the Hackney Hell Crew doing at a Naked Raygun show of a Chicago band? Like, I don't know. It was strange. It was definitely, as I say, it was a strange time. And there was a lot of water under the bridge. And then it was kind of going into the indie rock kind of, like the indie scene, you know? Husker Du were kind of mellowing out. Fugazi came along. And it kind of got bastardized with like Mega City 4 and that band, The Senseless Things. And it was kind of spreading out, so to speak, Not necessarily in a bad way, but in a weird way.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I guess like Britpop kind of eventually comes along in the UK and just sort of like wipes that stuff, not off the map, but like just sort of becomes like the thing that supplants it almost. But like prior to Britpop exploding, it's interesting to see that stuff kind of show up in the NME, and there's almost this push like to be the British equivalent of grunge or like whatever's happening
Yeah.
in America.
Well, that was the indie rock scene. The Boo Radleys,
Ned's Atomic Dustbin.
Atomic Dustbin, Ned's Atomic Dustbin, the Wonder stuff. That was always on the cusp of like the independent music scene. But that was always the headlining bands, and underneath it'd be like Jailcell or Drive. Do you remember Drive?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Drive was another one. Jailcell and
Dan?
Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan. Uh, and then it just kind of petered down. Like we'd always be the opening act for these weird bands, and they'd kind of laugh at us. There was one band from Birkenhead, I can't remember the name of them, and they were like a pseudo indie rock band with the long hair and like supposed to be the next big thing. And they called us a tin pop punk rock band. You know, oh, they're supporting. They're a tin pop punk rock band, whatever. And then we played with Fudge Tunnel as well in Wigan, which is another funny story going back to you mentioning Fudge Tunnel like 5 minutes ago. Fudge Tunnel from Nottingham, they thought they were the bee's knees, and they were supposed to headline the show, right? And we were like, yeah, whatever, do what you want. I said, but we're going to play, and it's going to be a bunch of kids from Wigan, a bunch of local kids, and they're all going to leave when we're finished because they're not interested in you. Because you're slower, you're more industrial. Like, they want to jump around and be stupid to us. And then they're going to leave. I said, it'd be best if you played before because there'd be more of a crowd. No, we're headliner, blah. All right, well, headline then, you know? And then we played. Everyone went crazy. It was fun. We were joking with the crowd. We knew off the crowd, like, you know, hey Timmy, how's your dad? Is he driving the buses tomorrow? Yeah, he'll be on the bus in the morning. You know, because we knew them all, and we were just joking with the kids. And you know, there's Susie, Jamie. It's Jamie, the guitar player sister. Susie. There's Susie. She's in the crowd. Hello, Susie. Everybody say hello to Susie. You know, and then like we just joke with the crowd and we'd be having fun, whatever. And then we finished and everybody left. The Fudge Tunnel are playing in front of 10 people. And we're just kind of waving, haha, I told you so. Should have played before us, but you know?
It's interesting because like after a certain point in the UK, and it's probably changed now because it's been a long time since I've like noticed, but it almost seems like there's two parallel scenes kind of happening, and they interact with each other. But like you're saying, there's sort of this like indie UK, very music industry adjacent kind of scene, but also still punk adjacent. Like a lot of people coming up out of punk rock, but then there's like very much like an anti-commercial, not like just by nature DIY punk scene that is so far removed from like mainstream culture, like like the 1 in 12 club kind of world,
Yeah.
versus the like Manic Street Preachers kind of world.
Well, there's a kid in Liverpool called Mikey, and he owns a vegan cafe stroke restaurant called the Guac and Roll. It's in Liverpool, and it's in one of the only areas left in Liverpool that is still kind of run down. I think he's the only open door on the block, and he's an old punk rocker. But he puts shows on too, and he has like a vegan restaurant in the afternoon, and then he puts shows on overnight. And he's like, I don't much financially, I don't know how he's doing, but scene wise, he's selling out shows. He's killing it. You know, it's funny. All these bands are going, and all these new bands that I've never heard of, but they're all like spiky hair punk bands, or he just put the Stupids on last week, which is funny. The Stupids and Chaotic Discord,
That's awesome.
and somebody else played the same show. The Verucas are playing in a couple of weeks, and there's a new band called Sludge. Sludge is a Wigan band. They're playing. They're doing good. So he's like creating his own scene, you know?
Hmm.
And people like the kids that I know in their late 40s, early 50s, will go for lunch. You know, what are you doing today? I'm not. Let's go to Mikey's place. And he's got all like Mega Pro posters, SSD posters, discharge posters on the wall, all framed, and he's doing a good thing. So he's totally DIYing it. As I say, financially, I don't know how he's doing, but he seems to keep the doors open.
Yeah, look at Lecky's spot too, right? Legion of Doom, Legion of
Yeah,
Doom.
Legion
Sorry,
of Boom.
Legion of Boom. Sorry, But like he's got Jailcell Recipe posters on the wall. He's got like sick old hardcore flyers there. It's like a
He's
cool
got a
room.
million records.
Yeah. Yeah.
Million records. Hey, Lecky, you got this? Yeah, I got 4 copies. You know, whatever.
So, so who were the bands locally when you were kind of getting into stuff that you were a fan of, or were there any kind of local bands that you were?
In Liverpool or the
Yeah,
Northwest?
Liverpool
Well, Electro
specifically, but I
Hippies.
guess
Electro Hippies was good. You remember the
oh,
Electro
they're
Hippies?
fucking amazing. And you got
Yeah,
there's a shared member, right?
yeah, Dom.
Yeah.
Dom, the guitar player. He's a bus driver now. Drives the buses, But he's a Liverpool fan. But we'll let him off with that. But he's a cat lover, so that's a good one. Yeah, Dom Murphy. Uh, and then that was the Electropy started with Simon Sparse. It was Simon, Dom, Geoff from Carcass. Remember Geoff was the singer of the Electropy originally?
Is that on a record or just like a demo or something with him?
I don't know. I think it was a demo, but we used to see him live, and he had the squeakiest voice ever. He still kind of does, and it's kind of funny because we seen Carcass in San Francisco. They supported Slayer, and I called him. I'm like, "Oh, you guys are playing San Francisco? Yeah, we're playing the Warfield." I'm like, "You want to put us on the list?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." No, 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 no. And then we go in, and we get an all access pass, which is kind of ridiculous. So we get this like lanyard or whatever, and we go in and we're talking because we get lost, and we hear the squeaky voice in the dressing room. We're like, "That's Geoff." I'm like, "Geoff." He's like, "Hello, Robbie, how are you?" Blah, blah. And then they start playing, and they're doing the thing, whatever. He's a nice guy. They're doing the thing, and they're playing the Warfield in San Francisco. And he's like, "Hello, San Francisco. Let me hear you scream." We were in fact, we were laughing our heads off. We're like, "This is the same Geoff that's like, hello, how are you?" Let me hear you scream, San Francisco.
Uh, I think
He was
I think Liverpool's like the one place that like will always cut you down to size, no matter what you're doing. I remember Foxy telling me a story about going to see Robbie Brookside wrestle, and all the guys standing at the back of the crowd with this giant sign that says "It's all a work," and standing up at some point during his match and just holding the sign that says "It's all a work," just raining on his parade.
Oh well, I moved here. When I moved to Philadelphia originally, they used to do that Night of the Living Dead in the skate park, and they put on Voorhees played, a bunch of bands played. I think it was pre-Walk the Plank, but it was kind of maybe SSS played, Down and Outs maybe played. I can't remember because that's a big kind of weird time for me. But what's that one band from Boston called? Shit.
Like Boston,
Like New Boston, like Boston, like
America,
maybe,
Boston,
yeah, but they sound like early Boston, but they're New Boston, like
Boston
80.
Strangler, or they're like oh,
No,
like Out
see,
Cold.
Out Cold, thank you. Yeah, Out Cold played. Out Cold and a bunch of Liverpool bands, and they had like it was Halloween. And again, going back to the sarcasm, they put they used to call me the ghoul because I'm a fucking skinny dude and I look like a ghost and I have no teeth and he's the living dead and it was Night of the Living Dead. And I just moved here and they made an extension on the mini ram, the shape of a coffin. And it said R.I.P. the Reed. But again, like I moved away. I was like you know, I was past tense then in Liverpool, but they're still fucking with me, you know,
Well,
which is
when I went over to England, it would have been the year 2000, 99, 2000,
okay.
and I was going to school in East Sussex in like Hurst on Sow. was the town, and we went up north on a trip to Scotland, and we stopped in York, and I went to a skate shop there, and I went just like in. I'm like, "Yo, what's the deal with these bands like Jailcell Recipes, Voorhees?" And they're like, "Oh, the guy from Jailcell Recipes works at a skate shop. He's kind of like very intimidating and very mean,
Yeah,
and it's really sort of the center of hardcore." Again, it schooled me on like '90s hardcore and late '80s hardcore in the North at that like trip. This is a random guy I met at a skate shop, and so even though you weren't there, going over there, your reputation and kind of it looms large in that town.
I know it's kind of funny too because we were the nicest dudes ever, but we were loud, we were obnoxious, we were punk rockers. You know, I met a guy in San Francisco from Manchester. He's a mover, old skateboard kid from Manchester. And same scenario. We used to go to the skate park in Stockport, but we wouldn't go two or three of us. We'd go 20 of us thick. We'd take like 4 carloads, and we'd be stuffed up in the car for an hour on the highway, full of candy and Coca Cola, and we wanted to ride skateboards. So we'd all show up. We'd throw the money at the guy at the desk at the skate park, and we'd bounce on in, and we wouldn't push kids out the way, but we want our runs and we want to skate, you know. So all these kids would kind of take a step back. So we looked super intimidating, but we weren't. We just wanted to skate and, you know, get
You
rid
know,
of all the sugar high. So this one kid from San Francisco's like, "Oh, Robbie Reid." I said, "Yeah," and I took a step back and I was like, "Because I remember you." I said, "Okay." I said, "Where from?" He said, "Oh, the Bone Skate Park in Stockport. You guys used to show up and used to scare the shit out of us, and we were scared, so we'd leave." And I'm like, "Well, that wasn't our intention, you know." As I say, we were just young and we wanted to skate. We wanted to cause a ruckus and run around and be crazy, you know. We weren't there to harm anybody. That's what Geoff said too. You know,
yeah,
Geoff Rowley. He was
yeah.
saying the same thing. We used to go to a ramp in a place called Cronton, which was outside of Liverpool, but you had to take the bus. It was a 45-minute bus ride. We used to get on the bus, and there'd be me and the rest of the crew and all that crew, but they were like, we were in our like late teens and they were just turning into teenagers. So at that point, you're intimidated. And we'd be on the bus smoking cigarettes, being stupid, blah, whatever. And Geoff and all his crew were like, "Oh, hope these guys don't beat us up," you know? And that wasn't our intention at all. We were just all hanging out, having fun, like just fucking off, basically, you know?
Well, like you said, Liverpool being the place it is, a lot of people that are putting out that vibe though would beat you up. So I imagine you're
Yeah,
contending with their.
I can see that too. But like with the punk rock and the skateboard scene, like it was that small, and we were all avoiding the scallies. We were trying to be as though we all kind of stuck together, you know.
Mhm.
But if you're 10, 12 years old, you still have that mentality of like, these guys want to beat us up because that's what you grew up with. No, oh, these guys are like our older brothers because they ride skateboards and listen to the same music. You still have that mentality of like, uh-oh, you know. But no, that definitely wasn't the intention at all. We'd see younger kids coming along, like Geoff especially, killed it, ripper, absolute amazing skateboarder, you know. Total, like he's gone down in the history books as we speak, you know. Got a bronze statue in front of the Staples Center originally, and then they moved it to in front of the Vans building. That's crazy. You know, his dad likes cricket and cups of tea. You know, Brian. There was another kid called Brian Sumner, Liverpool kid. Went over to Huntington Beach, started riding for Birdhouse skateboards, Tony Hawk skateboard company. I was skateboarder for Birdhouse. But then he went off the rails religiously. So now he's a pastor, and he's kind of one of them like weird, sun-drenched Southern California God Squad dudes, you know, which I have a totally different opinion upon, but I won't go into it.
And then, Robbie Brookside too, the greatest small room wrestler of all time, they say.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a lot of cool people that came out of that scene. A lot of great bands too, obviously.
A lot of weirdos, though, but that's it. It was all a bunch of weirdos. Like, how'd you have a professional, like a young kid who's going to become the biggest professional skateboarder? A professional wrestler who broke his legs and couldn't wrestle anymore. Was it his knees he fucked up and he?
Yeah, his knees got fucked up in a match in Germany, and then he came back to that show and saw the Voorhees play and got wolf packed by everyone at the show wearing lucha
Okay.
masks, and they snapped his knee and ended his career.
But he's still, where's he now? Florida?
He's the head trainer for WWE in Florida.
Okay. What about Paddy the Baddy? You mess with
Uh,
them?
I don't know where Patty the Batty.
You don't know Paddy the Baddy?
I know Patty the Batty, but I don't know where Patty the Batty is wrestling now.
What is it? The cage fighting shit?
He's in UFC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But
He's not a
Paddy the
hardcore
Baddy,
kid. Was he a hardcore kid?
no, but I'm just saying he's from Liverpool. That's why his name always comes up. Paddy the Baddy. And then Molly the Meatball. You know Molly the Meatball too?
No.
She's from Liverpool. She's in the same thing. But they're like brother and sister. So every time fighting comes up, I don't mess with any of it. I watch the boxing a little bit, but fighting not really for me. Or wrestling not really for me. But Paddy the Baddy and Molly the Meatball. Liverpool classic. He's a massive Liverpool fan. She's a massive Everton fan. And they're super good at what they do. And they're just comedians. Absolute Liverpool legend comedians, you know what I mean? They're so funny. But that always makes me laugh. Hey, Paddy the Baddy.
Yeah, with Brookside, he's definitely like one of those wrestlers that when you talk to someone from wrestling about him, he's got like he's worked with everybody. He's got a reputation of coming from wrestling in a time in the UK when you still had to like fight for real. Like after the ends of these matches, you'd go out and be like, "All right, who here wants to fight us to prove it's not fake?" and have to fight the fans. And so, like a real hard period in pro wrestling. And then when you tell him like, no, he's also got this like crazy deep punk rock history too,
Yeah.
completely removed from this side of things. It's like,
Giant Haystacks and
yeah,
remember
yeah.
Giant Haystacks and who was the other fella? Big Daddy? Was it Big Daddy?
Big Daddy, Rollerball, Rocco Rock, Mick McManus, fuck, who are some other, um oh man, I don't know why I'm blanking on all these names right now. But yeah, there's like a huge history. And that
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of the last in that kind of,
Yeah, I remember him and Duff, wasn't it? His partner was Duff.
yeah.
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 Okay.
Are you in that they did that BBC documentary on
I
him, right?
might be for a minute. I remember it. It was a Channel 4 documentary, and they give people video cameras for like maybe 24 hours or a week or whatever. And they'd have to video what they'd done in a week. I haven't seen it for years. I should Google it tonight. That'll be a blast from the past. But I might be in it for a hot second. I can't remember.
There's
Me or
footage.
Kelly or someone. Simon, you know Simon Kelly,
Yeah.
Liverpool
Yeah.
hardcore kid. Been best dude. There's like I should name drop some people. Simon Kelly, best dude. Uh, Fat Rich.
Yeah.
I went out for Fat Rich is in England right now, which is funny, and he keeps texting me. You want anything? You want a newspaper or some chocolate? I'm like, no, I'm all right. Just get home safe, and then we'll go watch baseball when you get back. But he's epic, and then it's funny too moving back to Philly, and then we'll go for lunch and we'll watch the Phillies and we'll hang out. And uh, people love him or hate him.
He comes
You
up
know?
all the time on the show, like Radio Raheem Records,
Oh
and
yeah,
like it's such a important label and the stuff they're doing, and
What did he do? Parts Unknown as well. He done
Parts Unknown
before.
before that,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, the stuff he did with Very and Shark Attack and the homie, like one of my biggest influences in terms of record collecting and
Oh, exactly. Idiot savant, absolute idiot savant. You know, million old skateboards, million old records, all this artwork, all this old sneakers. Like that, I sit down with him. We have lunch and we watch baseball, and I'll be like, "Oh, you have this record?" And again, same thing. Yeah, I got four.
yeah. Well, I remember going to stay with you guys, and it was just like both of you were just like so like these impossibly cool like dudes like at all those crazy old skateboards. I think it was your skateboards on all the walls, and
Probably
that
half and half. Yeah.
yeah, and then like yeah, you're saying like crazy like wild artwork in retrospect that he had hanging on the walls, and yeah, it was just like every record and yeah, just like very cool. And it's before it was I guess the period before hardcore became cool. Like now hardcore's cool again, but at that point it was like even in America very underground.
Well, that's what we were into, and that's what we dug. You know. And it's funny because I was talking to him because Jailcell's releasing that record in October, and we were talking about that over lunch. And he said, "When did you guys split up?" I said, "I don't know, 91." He goes, "When did you do your first record?" I said, 88, 89. He goes, "Okay, good." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because hardcore ended in 1990." And I'm like, "What about?" And he goes, "No." And I'm like, "What about?" And he's like, "No, 1990. That was it. Done. Finished." I'm like, "Okay, not arguing with that." But
I,
as I say, a lot of people, he's love or hate, you know. And a lot of people like, oh, fuck that dude. He done this, he done that, or like, I love that dude. He's the best. He has a minor threat acetate. There's one of one, you know. I'm like, I know where he lives. And every time he'd come to the West Coast when I lived out there, he'd call me, coming out west. What are you doing? This is a classic as well. I'm like, nothing. He goes, okay, we're going to get dinner in the Presidio. Okay, there's this one restaurant, meet us at 7 o'clock. Okay. So it's the middle of summer, 7 o'clock. I take the bus all the way to the Presidio. Him and Amy are outside. Amy's cues a button, dressed up, super nice dress on. You know Amy, his wife. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So Amy's there, cues a button, super nice dress on. Rich is there in like a Ralph Lauren suit jacket and like a button down shirt. I show up in a pair of shorts and a bucket hat. I'm like, what are you doing dressed up? He goes, it's Mitchell and Star. I said, you could have fucking told me. I said, I'm here in a pair of shorts and a bucket hat. And now I've got to sit in the Mitchell and Star restaurant with you. He goes, oh, they don't care. Come on. And we went in and the guy goes, can I take your coat? I said, you can take me hat. So I had to take my bucket hat off and he's talking about port. Rich is in there sitting down talking about the vial. You know, he's talking about the vial in one sentence, and he's talking about how ages the port in the next sentence. And I'm like, you're a maniac. But that's why I love him because he's the best dude, you know. And he always at the end because every time he come out there or I meet him in Philly for lunch or for dinner or whatever, I'm like, what do we owe you? And he's like, no, I got it. When you settle down, he says, when you settle down, you can buy the lunch. I'm like, all right, it's a deal. And every time Parts Unknown would release something new, or Radio Raheem, I'd be like, hey, Rich, I'm looking for that book. He goes, what's your address again? Text me the address. I'll send you one. I'm like, listen, let me PayPal you. And then a week later, I get a big package from the last year's worth of Radio Raheem books or records. And the invoice would be in there and it'd be like zero. And I'm like, Best
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's cool that him and Cooch are doing that because like it's the two guys that are like arguably like some of the deepest heads I know about this
Oh,
music.
it's 100%. 100%. And I was in, Colin from Sit and Spin Records in Philly.
I know the store, but I don't really
Yeah,
know
yeah,
Colin
yeah.
too
I
well,
was in
Dave.
there today. It's actually a couple of blocks from where I'm living right now. So I went in there. I went for lunch today, and then I stopped in to say what's up because they're doing a record show this weekend in Philly. And I went to speak to him for a minute, and we started on the Fat Rich story. And he's like, "I said, do you know Fat Rich?" I said, "He's a local dude." He says, "No, but uh, he's." I had an original handwritten letter from Rabies that I traded him, and he came in all stealth one time a couple of years ago and said, "I'm rich. I heard you got something for me." Again, typical, stupid, but amazing. We should write a book about Fat Rich.
Oh yeah, they're good. There's one time he was in Toronto. I took him to this record store here, and the owner had great records. Not the owner, but the guy there had unbelievable records, but very cantankerous. And he was such a dick to Rich. And I took Rich out of the store. We walked out of the store, and he's like, "I think I'm gonna go punch that guy in his fucking face right now." And I'm like, "Please don't. I gotta live in the city." And like this would. He was quite livid at that moment, and I think I saw the angriest side of him I'd ever seen in that
Yeah,
moment.
I've got a shitload of old English reggae records, old Greensleeve records, and old weird like English dub shit. And every time I see him, he's like, "What's up with them Greensleeve records?" I'm like, "You ain't getting them." I said, "You will." I said, "I'll put them in your. I'll put them in. When I die, you can have them."
So, what led you to form Jailcell Recipes then? Because there's not really a band. It's not like you're tapped into like a sound that's kind of happening. Like, there's obviously the stuff that will wind up becoming the proto grind stuff, the earache stuff, and then there's other like the Mega City 4, even Leatherface sounding stuff. But there's no one really doing what you guys are doing at that time.
Skate rock, skateboarding, 100% skateboarding, skate rock. You know, all the thrasher stuff,
So,
all
would you
that
play
kind
with?
of weird.
Well, like Ripcords, like Ripcord, would they be like a band that would have been inspirational to you in that style? Because you guys are doing like a faster, like like I don't want to say American style, but like definitely like not as pronounced, sort of like classic UK sound.
Well, again, totally influenced by skateboarding, like uh, thrasher compilations, blazing what is it? Blazing trucks, barking trucks, blazing wheels. What that was number three, the Wild Riders of Boats. So it was all basically because I met them dudes. There was a skateboard ramp in Warrington in the north of England, and they used to put on a skateboard competition in 86, 87, 88. They had a European best of skateboard competition. And in the late 80s, this is before the boom, before the Back to the Future boom, nobody gave a fuck about skateboarding. So there was like people from everywhere there because it was a big deal. So Dave, the bass player, uh, started a band called the what do they call the Great Medicine Men. Okay, he was in a band called the Great Medicine Men, and it was Dave and this dude called Craig Burrows Stiffneck, who had a ramp in his backyard, which is also I can go back to a Beastie Boy story, but that's for part two. But they played the Saturday night at the skateboard jam, and Craig was like, "I don't want to do this anymore." And then there was an old pro skateboarder from England called Danny Webster, and he was a drummer. So he got on the drums and like jammed a bunch of drums. And Dave was like, "Well, I kind of want to get a little serious with this." And I was a little punk rock kid at the skateboard competition, rode skateboards, and that was few and far between back then. You know, if you're a skateboard kid in Europe, you were like a surf kid or like a bro. But the skate punk thing hadn't really kicked off. So if you met another kid who knew who Septic Death was, and he knew what maximum rock and roll was, and he knew about blatant localism, the JFA 7-inch, you were buddies instantly. You know?
Yeah.
You hear that new Gangrene record? I just got a copy from Rat Cage in New York. It was like $4. Took 3 months to get here, but I got it. You know? That kind of weird shit. So you were instantly buddies. You'd see a kid walking down the street in a pair of Vans in England in the late 80s. You'd stop him in the street. You know? You ride skateboards? No. You listen to fucking MDC? Yeah. We are friends right now. Because there was like 20 kids in Liverpool in the early 80s that were influenced by that kind of shit, you know? But that's how Jailcell came around, was through that. And then I moved back. Well, I was back where I was living. I was originally from Liverpool, and then my parents broke up and moved across the water to a place called Wallasey, which is across the River Mersey. So I was living in Wallasey at the time with Peck from Under Siege and Disattack. He's an old punk rock friend of mine, and
he's come up a lot. Robbie Brookside talks
very much. Another amazing, influential person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Peck and PT from Under Siege, they put on all the Planet X gigs. You know, and you love him or you hate him, because he was super opinionated, and he'd say, you know, you'd go to the gig and you'd be eating a hamburger, and he'd be like, "You can't eat that in here. Get out. You're not coming in." "Well, I'll finish it outside." "No, you're not coming in." You'd be like, "Okay." And he was intimidating, you know, big dreadlocks, covered in tattoos in the 80s. As I say, super influential in every way. Super womanizer, like bit of a drunk, but again, you know, and he fucking, like, he put on flyers just to get people to go to the show. Discharge. And then he put discharge in massive writing on the top of the flyer, and then underneath in tiny typeset he'd type, "Will not be playing." But and then he'd list 10 other bands of people at show up and go, "One for Discharge, please." It's like they're not playing, but all these other bands are. So he was comical as well, you know, totally comical. And then we fell out with him. Jailcell fell out with him. Because Ian, our drummer's dad, worked for like something to do with meat, and I can't remember whether he was a meat distributor or a butcher, but Ian worked in the clerical division, and Peck and Pete C were like super vegans at the time and got wind of it. So we played Planet X with Use It Today, and he put on the flyer, "Use It Today," and all the other bands, and at the bottom of the flyer, he put, "And your Jailcell Recipes." Tiny. You know, just a dig. So, and I fell out with him for a while, even though we were super good friends, and he died. He died, I don't even know, 10, 12 years ago. But again, same scenario. We'd be super good friends, and then we wouldn't speak for a year. But again, super major influence. And you could write a book on Peck as well.
I think you write a book about Liverpool and the punk scene and the interactions, like, just the stories that people have about being at Probe Records and this place that's like, because it's a hard city, everyone's kind of hard to each other a little bit. But
oh yeah, and it's sarcastic too. Everyone's super sarcastic, you know. Like, people would be like, you'd walk down the street and somebody go, "Hello, dickhead,"
yeah.
And that means, "Hello, how are you, friend? I like you." You know what I mean? But people get offended. And I like, you stupid cow. And that was friendly. But if you weren't from there, you'd be like, why is he calling me a stupid cow? That's not nice. That means he likes you or she likes you. You know, it's just that's the way it is and the way it's kind of, I don't know, influence from the dock workers and the longshoremen, so to speak, and going far back as that.
So how did that Youth of the Day? Because you guys did a tour with Youth of the Day, right? Like,
Oh, that was weird.
how
Totally
did that
weird.
how did that happen? Like, come about? I mean,
Well, Alan Woods, the guy who done First Strike Records, there was which is funny because we teased him and said, there's already a First Strike Records out of Canada, correct?
I think there is. Yeah, yeah.
They done the Asexuals record.
They're
Remember the
the only record they
Asexuals?
ever, and it's a very similar logo too that they have to the other First Strike.
But that's true, right? Because I was thinking today, and I was like, oh, he's going to ask me questions about First Strike, and I remember it coming from a Canadian record. So it was one of the Asexuals records.
The first LP, and I think it's the only thing that ever came out on First Strike. I think it was John. We talked about it on the episode way back when, but like, yeah, I think it came out because there was some kid and he just started this record, and that was like their one and
Okay.
done. Yeah.
Did they turn into the Doughboys, or is that am I?
Yeah, Asexuals became, well, he splits off at one point, Kastner, and forms the Doughboys with John Cummins from the band Rocktopus. And but then the Asexuals kind of carried on and did another two LPs.
And they done like that weird country record. Remember that the third LP was like a weird ass like jangly country record, and it was kind of a joke.
Yeah, and then Wiz from Mega City 4 joined Doughboys for a while, like moved to
Yeah.
Canada.
Okay.
And I think like wrote like Shine and like some of their biggest songs with them.
Not Wiz from Mega City 4. Was it Wiz from who was the other Wiz?
Am I
Went to
fucking this up?
jail. No. Genetic. Yeah, that band from England, Genetic.
Yeah.
Was it the singer called Wiz too? Ended up in jail for.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, okay. No, I could be completely wrong, so I'll shut up.
One thing I did want to ask you about, not that he wound up in jail, but did you ever have any interactions with the guy from Statement?
No.
Okay, because they would have been like, I guess it's a one man band, and I guess it would have been like super hard anarcho, but like they're the only hardline band from England.
Don't even recall. The only statement I recall is the vegan straight edge man from the US. Was
They're
that
they're
statement?
that's Statement, but they're from the UK.
Oh shit! Like statement, Earth Crisis, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, they were like on Hardline Records with Vegan Reich and Raid. Like,
Okay. No, I didn't know. I thought they were all. I always think that's upstate New York, and I always, oh yeah, upstate New York. You know. So no, they were English.
yeah, they were like they had some like heavy, weird anarcho tie too. Like they did records with Muted Existence. They did Solstice. Fuck, who else? There's someone. Oh, the Apostles. They did a split with.
Okay.
That's California, I guess. In Human Nature. Um, but there's someone else I thought they did like more. But they were around for a long time, and that dude, I guess, also like disavowed hardline very quickly
That band Genetic from
with Wiz, the other
yeah,
Wiz.
Wiz. What was it? What was that record called? Something about South Africa from a.
Well, they did a split with a Canadian band too, right? Or am I confusing with another band on like Manic Ear Records, where it was like, fuck, was Substance maybe?
Subvert.
It was Subvert, and Subvert and Substance maybe did a split or something. Maybe that's what I'm confusing.
I remember Subvert played Planet X. That was a good show.
Subvert,
In Subvert.
You know who actually Subvert's on Pusshead's list of the greatest '90s hardcore records, or like greatest '80s hardcore records when he did like
The top
80.
100 in Thrasher.
Yeah, I think they're 100 like record 100 on that list. The Subvert 7
Okay,
inch, great
but he
record.
messed. He done the Misfits thing too in 1986. He done a Danzig cover of Thrasher and done a Misfits discography and messed it all up. So it's all wrong apparently, and all these Misfits buffs are like, well, there's 1,200 of purple. In Thrasher, it says there's only 700, but there's 1,200, and there's a big to do about that. You know,
Yeah, that's
which is
awesome.
hilarious.
Did one thing I want to ask you about? Did you guys ever do a Peel session proper?
No, because we got refused. He played the record on the show.
I know that. I've heard that. I heard him drop you guys on there.
He played the record on the show, and he played it a couple of times. And then you used to be able to just call him on the show when he was playing records. And Alan from First Strike Records called him. Hey, John, this is Alan from First Strike. And he's like, oh, Jailcell Recipes. And he's like, yeah. That was the big joke at the time because every band got a Peel session except for Jailcell. Every
Yeah,
band. And they always used to, they'd take you to BBC, they'd put you in a studio, they'd pay for everything, they'd buy you dinner, they'd produce you super well, and then they'd release a record. You wouldn't get a penny out of it, but the BBC would make all the money, but you get the prestige, so whatever. And I think we were the only band from that genre or time period who never got a Peel session. And that was always a joke. Hey, Peel, where's our session? So we never got one. And Alan was on the phone with John Peel. And he said, hey, John, how about a click? And he hung up before he could say session. Because either he didn't want to do it or the record had finished. I can't remember the whole story, but we never got one. And some of the most atrocious bands in the world had Peel sessions and then got released on them 12 inches with the grey and the grey. You know,
yeah.
you probably own 50 of them. I know I own 50 of them.
I definitely someone like like I think that's my favorite Stiff Little Fingers record is that 12 inch they did the Peel session 12 inch.
Okay.
Um, like obviously like yeah like the Napalm Death stuff like all the weird kind of proto grindcore kind of stuff that was coming out on there. There's some weird stuff too, obviously like super like obscure like you're saying terrible bands, obscure bands
Yeah.
that did it, and it's interesting though because like you guys don't fit in, I think, with the sounds of the time that would have been like happening in the sort of way. Like you guys are kind of like an island unto yourselves, it seems, like looking at it from as a fan.
True.
Like stuff comes after you guys that's inspired by you. Like I think, like you talk to like people like Russ and like hardcore eventually goes where you guys are kind of going in the UK. But at the time, it just feels like you look at that first compilation that you guys are on with like Dan and Joyce, something,
There's McKinney.
yeah,
There's
Experience,
McKinney Experience.
yeah, and bands like where it's like you don't really sound like any of those bands. That's
The
for sure.
Gruesome Stains record.
Yeah, the Gruesome Stains record
Yeah.
with the Flexi in it, great record, killer comp. But
You want a copy? I think I've got like 12.
I got a copy.
Because I keep seeing them randomly and they're like $1 a piece. And I'm like, what's the movie? I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of like low key sleeper, unbelievable records you can still pick up super cheap from the
Yeah.
UK from the late '80s, early '90s. That band Decline, I think's awesome. Like outside of Leatherface, maybe Snuff Records, like
Snuff's great. Yeah.
Voorhees too. People go for spend money, like those records go for money now. But like, there's just so much great stuff that people just don't know about. It seems.
Yeah. Default.
Default's
Default's
fucking
good.
awesome. Oh yeah.
Default's good. Trying to think of what else. Well, obviously, you had to see your records. Think of what else. And then I have a little thing, like it wasn't cool at the time, but I have a thing for like Extreme Noise Terror. they were so fucking like I grew up on disc punk and then turned it to a skate punk, if that means anything to anybody, you know. And then there was a little bit of a crass punk, a crass hole, you know.
So who were
And
the
then
bands? Who were the bands that you were kind of like going to in that first kind of incarnation? Like, what's that? Toxith? Is that no? What's the name? I'm trying to remember the name of the band that has that
oh,
single
public
Pu-
disgrace,
Public Disgrace. That's it.
awful record,
Did you like that, Bo?
terrible. That was released by Pro Plus.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's another classic you can find for $5, and I probably own 10 of them because I keep seeing it, and I'll buy it for $5. Yeah, it was Chickenhead, but they were in a band before Public Disgrace called Daz Reiner, Liverpool punk band, a little bit more glammy, a little bit more kind of Clash. Like I don't even know who you'd kind of, you know, that like spray painted like shirt kind of look,
Yeah.
and like the white jeans and the creepers, and like they were called Daz Reiner. They were better than Public Disgrace, and they broke up and started Public Disgrace. Public Disgrace went for like the spiky look, and that record's awful. But people freak out about it because it looks cool, you know, and they're all throwing kegs around in like the alley or
Yeah, it
whatever.
looks awesome.
But it's a crap record. Well, what's the one line is not, it's not a line, it's the introduction to the song is 1, 2, sniff glue. Brilliant. But everybody from Liverpool knows Public Disgrace, and everybody cringes as well. Ooh, Public Disgrace. And then everybody always talks shit about Probe. That's a Probe record. Ooh, terrible. But Probe's still there, you know? Probe Record's still there, and that's gone through a lot of history. A lot of history, you know? Pete Burns from Dead or Alive worked there, and he was a trans dresser, but he was a big dude, and he used to wear high heels and a dress, and he walked through Liverpool in high heels and a dress. And again, Liverpool being Liverpool, dudes would yell at him, all this, whatever, and he'd take a heel off and beat the shit out of him. So people would see him and they'd take a step back. Don't say anything to this dude. He'll batter you, you know, and he
Yeah.
would.
Robbie Brookside said he reckons he's the hardest person in the world. Like just because
Makes sense.
like couldn't take shit from anybody. Like
No, but that's because he grew up in that environment and he done what he did. Again, this is who I am. I back home my hair, I wear a dress, I wear high heels. I ain't taking any shit on the bus, walking down the street, you know? And there's an old, don't know whether it's true, but I'll tell it anyway. There's an old story about him hanging out in London with Susie and the Banshees. And then the drummer, Budgie, from Susie and the Banshees, was giving him a hard time, calling him this, calling him that, calling him this. And then got up and left the pub. And then it's like, okay, I'm going home. Budgie leaves. And then Pete gets up, finishes drinking, and says, okay, I'm leaving. Ta-da, bye-bye. And then left. And apparently they found Budgie the next day in the alley. Smashed the fuck up. So was it Pete Burns? We'll never know. He's like a total whodunit, you know? Whodunit of the London punk glam scene. So that's another fable, you know?
yeah. Well, like the story is once again Robbie told it about Cockney rejects showing up and get beaten up when
Oh, yeah, they wouldn't let him in because they were all West Ham fans. They were supposed to play the Warehouse in Liverpool, and they all showed up at the train station with the guitars. And all the because there was a big divide between Liverpool and West Ham football clubs. All the Liverpool fans figured out who they were. Standoff at the train station. They just got on the train, turned around, and went back to London. Never played that Eric show.
Yeah.
End of.
Pardon me?
That was it.
Yeah. So I guess like what was that Youth of the Day tour like, you know, at that time?
Oh, it was totally bizarre. See, Going back to Alan Woods' first strike record, I think the promoter, Alan, got in contact with him and he's like, okay, you today's coming over. Okay, we have a backline, we have a van. All they have to do is show up basically with the guitars. You know, gas is in the tank. So that's taking a lot of money off the promoter. I think the promoter was called Doug something. Doug Carrion. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Yeah.
He's on like a New York promoter.
Yeah. What band? He's in a band too. Anyway, but yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Okay, well, he shows up with you to say, here's my guys, you for today. We picked them up from the Krishna Temple in London. We played four dates with him. But again, it was easy money for him because he didn't have to pay anything. He didn't have to import anything. I think Alan might have even made T-shirts for the tour. Like that was the thing to do back then, was get the English promoter to do the merch. You didn't have to bring it over and sell the merch to the American promoter at cost. So the American promoter made all the money, but then that got the bands around and pushed the scene up a little bit. So we picked up Youth of Today from the temple, the Krishna Temple in London. And it was Ray, Sammy, Purcell, and Walter. And they just got in the back of the van and we left. And that was it. And we started playing. But it was funny because Sammy and Purcell were like super friendly. And they were like sleeping on each other. And they were like kids. They were like 18, 19. It was a cultural difference, you know what I mean? Two kids from New York, that's how you grew up and that's what you done. Ray was in the back of the van chanting, doing his Christmas thing. And then we just played and it was kind of crazy. Like at the time, looking back at the time, you didn't really think nothing of it. Another gig, another show, you know? But looking back at it now, it's like kind of super influential. Because we would Jailcell doing our thing and all the straight edge kids would show up. And all the straight edge kids would do the whole tour. The Northern Wolfpack, you know about the Northern Wolfpack.
Well, yeah, tell other people about it because I've obviously heard about it from going over there.
Well,
But I think
all the kids, all the young straight edge kids from the north, Durham, Bradford, Lecky, Durham, and Liverpool formed, because they were all straight edge kids and there wasn't that many straight edge kids in the north of England, but they all had this bond. They called themselves the Northern Wolfpack. So they were all Nick Royals. Nick Royals was involved before he was a raver. Tony Leathers. You know Tony Leathers?
I don't know if I know that name.
Big dude, old straight edge dude. We're going back 20, 25 years ago now, but he was always a big influence on them dudes. So they all had cars and they used to drive around and follow the bands around. So they'd be at all the Gilman Biscuit shows and they'd be at all the Youth Today shows and all the straight edge shows. And they started a bunch of bands and that's where Voorhees came out of. And
Steadfast, I guess, before that.
Steadfast before that. Voorhees. There was a couple of other ones as well. They've done demos but it was all about the graphics and stuff, you know what I mean? The recording didn't really matter, but they had the dudes with the construction gloves on and the baseball bats. And so they'd be at the gigs, Youth Today gigs. But there'd be kids there, because it was early on, there'd be kids there like, what's going on? Who are all these kids? Doing backflips into the crowd with gloves on with X's. They couldn't figure it out, you know? I have a friend, Adam, still speak to him now. He had a pair of shorts on and he wrote on the short bold as big as he could in like a big black Sharpie. And bold is a laundry detergent in England. So people would laugh at him, you know? Bold. thinking he had laundry detergent written on his pants.
That's awesome.
So you used to say it was a trip, and then I had a hat. I had a baseball cap with it was Alva hat, and then I just left it in the van one day, and the next day Ray was wearing it. Didn't say, "Can I wear this?" Like not, and then he basically wore it for the whole tour, and all the rest of Jailcell were laughing at me and giving me the elbow. When are you gonna ask Ray for your hat back? And I was like, "Well, you can wear it. I'll let him wear it. It's okay. It's okay. It's Ray. You can wear it." And then when they split, he left it in the van. So he just stupid shit like that, you know.
One Walters on the show, he said that was like kind of, he thought Youth Today at the height of their powers on that tour, and that Ray was like the best he ever was in terms of being a front person of that band on that
Oh,
tour.
they were. I was like a fan, but not the biggest of fans, like the Wolfpack or the Straight Edge Kids or whatever. But they were definitely powerful and crazy, and you know, again, same scenario. Like there was no real fashion at the time, but then they show up in like you know Nike Dunks and like sweatpants and like and you like you'd expect the punk rock shows to be like punk rock looking kids, but they were like basketball looking kids, and they were like doing backflips and cartwheels and whatever. So it was influential, definitely, you know, but in a different kind of aspect, a different kind of weirdness. If you hadn't seen it, you know, with the construction gloves and the collegiate jackets and all that now, which is 10 a penny, you see that everywhere now. But in 1989, seeing a guy with Krishna beads doing backflips, you know, screaming, "Can't close my eyes." You're like, what the fuck's going on? You know, weird. And then, I don't even know, we played with Fugazi when Fugazi started, Manchester. And it's funny too because we roll in, we're loading in. Ian Mackay's standing there fixing an amp. He's standing there like screwing the back onto the amp. And we're putting our stuff there, and he just looks up and he goes, "Hey man." I'm like, "Hello." Turned around, walked away. I'm like, fuck, I have like 9 million questions to ask you right now. And that's all I can say is hello. You know, and that was it. That was my Ian Mackay experience, introduction and deduction, if that's a word. It was, hello.
That's why you got to start a podcast so you can punish people with hours of questions.
Mm-hmm.
You
But
know,
that
otherwise it's
was
not.
definitely. And then also Rollins played. Rollins played, and we interviewed Rollins. It's on the internet, it's all over. And we interviewed him. And again, same scenario. I'd seen Black Flag on the My War tour. It's actually on that video, the Jetta Sounds video. I'm in the show. We went to that show. But then the Niggas played before them. And it was Mugger and Bill Stevenson, and I can't even remember who else played. And we were like, these guys are so obnoxious. Like people were throwing shit at them, like, fuck you. Because they were like super sexist and super nasty. And I seen them and we were laughing. We thought it was hilarious. And then we interviewed Rollins like 2 years ago. And I was biting my tongue to ask him about the Niggas. Never did. So that was another missed opportunity.
It that's the, I feel like Henry, I've never had that moment with where I've had gotten to ask him all my nerdy questions, but I went over to the Discord house about four years ago now, and my friend and I just punished Henry for like 4 hours. Not recorded it or anything, just like though, asked him like, "What do you think of you today?" Like every nerdy question I've ever wanted to ask him, and I just got it all in my system. It was super fun. It was like the
Is it still as like museum as it's supposed to be, or is that a Like, because people say, it can't be like that. They can't have ticket stubs from shows. They can't have, like, you know, youth brigade 7 inches in the kitchen closets. Like, is
Like, I
it
don't know
still?
if, yeah, I don't think I don't know about Youth Brigade 7 inches in the kitchen closet, but like certainly everything else, like it is museum like, and that's I guess the end game for that place is it gets recognition by the city because it's not right, it's not in DC proper, it's in like
Bethesda.
yeah, so like it gets like recognition and becomes a museum. But yeah, like they've got it's wild like how early on he realized what he was doing was important and preserved like teen idols stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's like how many of us do a band like in high school and are like, this is important. I got to keep every piece of shit that
That's what
relates
I'm
to this
saying.
band.
It's so idiot savant and it's so like ahead of its time. Is it that truthful? But I guess if you've been and you've seen it, then it's true.
Yeah, oh, it
Huh?
definitely is, and it's like yeah, and like the reason I got into the house was because I had heard from his brother the night before that there was a tape of the Bad Brains covering Screaming Fist by the Vile
Oh
Tones
shit. Okay.
with Henry and him singing on it. And so I was at Discord asking if this existed, and they called Henry over, or they called Ian over. And Ian came over and then brought us over to the house and played us not that tape, but a tape of the Bad Brains playing their like first show with HR singing, and they cover Screaming Fist by the Vile Tones in it. And so yeah, like it's everything I hoped it would be and more.
Freddie Pompey ended up in Philly,
Yeah.
and he used to. I have a punk rock friend called Jamie from the northeast of England. He's a ship welder. He became super good friends with Freddie, and he hangs out at this bar called the Pope on Passyunk Avenue. And I'd go in, and they'd be like, it'd be Jamie and Freddie every time, and we'd talk about all that stuff. And I'd walk out, and I'd be like, "Fucking hell!" I just spent half an hour talking to Freddie Pompey about stuff he doesn't remember. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, "What's up with that file tone 7 inches?" He goes, "I'll get you one." I'm like, all right, you know. I got my own in the end, but you know,
Well, he's the reason that record store, what was it called? Noise Pollution on
okay,
just South Street.
yeah,
They at one point I got off them the Teenage Head 7 inch with the picture sleeve, which was crazy rare, and they had the Viletone Screaming Fist acetates, and my friend bought
oh,
them off
yeah.
them, and like
That
some,
was Jack.
I guess yeah, like, and I guess it was through Freddie selling that stuff there. He was
Okay,
on the podcast before he passed away, and
yeah,
I feel so lucky I got to talk to him
yeah,
because
definitely. Well, Jack from Noise Pollution passed away too.
oh shit, rest in peace.
5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But he didn't tell anybody he got cancer. And he didn't tell anybody, and he was basically there till the day he locked the door, walked home, and died. Jack was essential to Philadelphia punk rock too. I remember going in there years ago, and they had a nub 7 inch on the wall, and it was $75. And I was like, I can't pay $75 for the 7 inch. Now it sells for like 450. I'm like, fuck, I should have bought it. You know, so every time I was on the West Coast and I go on a record store in San Francisco, I'd be like, you got a nub 7 inch for me? And they'd all just be like, shut up, you idiot. You know?
I yeah, I got some great records out of there. I got the Inside Out 7 inch on like the Baby Blue,
Okay.
and one of my big regrets is not buying the Serial Killer 7 inch that they had there with the bag of dirt on it. And I just didn't know what it was then. I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. And then now I'm like, oh fuck, I wish I had
Oh,
made
I
that
used to
up.
go in. I used to work around the corner and live around the corner. So I'd get a coffee and I'd go in, and Jack would go, nothing. I'm like, all right, Jack, see you tomorrow. And I'd go in and he'd go, nothing. And I'm like, give me that stepmother's record. And he'd go, you are desperate. But
You
I
know,
bought some shit from there. Then they go in on the wall. Got all my carnivore records from there, whatever, some weird stuff. And then Leonard working there and tuned me into all the oi stuff and all. Used to make some weird Sex Pistols t-shirts. And there was always something to pick up, you know?
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, like rest in peace because that store was always fun to get into when I'd show up in town. Like great records
But
in
he,
Philadelphia.
Jack was the biggest Beatles fan ever as well. And he was the biggest Beatles nerd about it too. And he had the Abbey Road. You remember that he had the Abbey Road street sign on the wall?
Oh
An
man,
old wooden street sign that somebody had gone to Abbey Road and stolen before they just started painting them on the wall.
yeah,
He had that in noise pollution on the wall, and he knew everything about them. Like the red and blue records, when they're standing on the stairs, the compilations of the red and blue records, the Beatles records. And it's like,
yeah,
them photos were taken in Holland in a block of flats. And now they're all sealed off, but people break the doors down to get the photos taken. Like, how do you know that? He goes, from a Beatles fan. Everybody should know that. I like, yeah.
yeah. It's sad that there's like kind of this like type of record store person that there really isn't in that way anymore. Like the one who would know everything about the Beatles, but also at the same time be carrying like serial killer and carnivore records.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there is, like, in, you know, towns that you haven't been to, or big city, USA, not so much anymore, you know? But the vinyl, like, the reinvention of vinyl is doing a lot with the kids, I guess. I'm walking up the street and see 14-year-old girls carrying Black Sabbath records. Like, bizarre. But I'd rather them listen to records than Alexa. You know what I mean? Or whatever, because nobody's making money off Alexa. At least if you're buying a record, you're making a couple of bucks. If you stream a song on Alexa, you're making what? A penny? If that? You know more than me.
Yeah, no, believe me,
You
I
know what I
don't.
mean?
I don't like. If anyone, I think as long as someone pays attention at this point, like that's even if they're just listening on Alexa, it's hard enough to get people to listen. There's just so much noise out there when you put something out that yeah, like obviously people buying records is the best way in terms of getting support from people, but I think just getting people to pay attention to even know what you're doing now is so much harder than it was when we started doing this thing as a band. Like, we went over the first time to England. Jace Kilvo brought us over, and
Jeffrey Oikott.
Jeffrey Oikott. Yeah, pre Jeffrey Oikott. This was like, but he got in touch with us, brought us over. He's like, this guy, Peter Bauer is going to put out your record on his label, and then through Andy and Vice, Andy kind of bootlegged the record on Vice because he never told anyone else at Vice that it was coming out on Vice at the time. And we went over in there, and next thing we know, we're in the NME, and we're like, this is easy. Wow, it's crazy easy to get people to pay attention. Like, we play shows, I'd like do something crazy on stage, and next thing I know, it'd be like on some blog the next day. Whereas now it just feels like maybe I'm just old and that's why I can't tap into it in the same sort of way. But now it's like a lot harder to get people to kind of pay
Well,
attention to what we're
I
doing.
think it was on pause for a while with like CDs and burning CDs, and then Napster. It was kind of music was kind of paused for a while, I think. Like, and then live music and the festival scene wasn't as big as it was, and it because you could do everything from a set of headphones or a laptop. So it was kind of paused, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's opened up again because you have to go to the record store, you have to buy the vinyl, you have to go to the show. I think it's a lot more wide open again these days, and a lot more social than
Yeah.
that kind of like. I got a friend of mine gave me, I don't even know what you'd call it anymore, like like it held 10,000 songs.
Like an iPod.
No, it was before that. It was like a computer something or other. I don't know, but it had 10,000 songs on it. It's like, dude, you will never have to buy anything ever again. 2 weeks later, it shit the bed and I threw it away. I'm like, but that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because it was so disposable.
Yeah.
So I have to have the meat and potatoes now. I have to have the record, you know? And then I know people who own record stores and they're like, yep, CDs are coming back. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Yep. People are buying CDs again. I'm like, people want my 8 tracks.
Yeah. We're playing checkers out here though, and today Green Day announced that they're launching their own coffee pod brand, and they have a Green Day branded Keurig coffee maker machine coming out. So we're putting out records. They're playing 3D chess over here, putting out coffee pods and coffee makers and stuff. So there's a whole other level of marketing that we haven't even begun to tap into.
All right. You want to put me on pause for a minute? I've got something to do real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I guess like you guys went on tour with Green Day, right? Too? Like that was that their first
ever
tour?
tour in England, yeah.
Was that like around Christmas time too? And they do that like
The Nativity play?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'm in that. I'm the sheep banging the farmer on stage with big white dreadlocks and like a farmer's hat on. And then I'm on that MTV show. I'm at the side of the stage in a Digits t-shirt for the whole show. So if you'd ever watch it again, I'm on the side of the stage in a Digits t-shirt. But
amazing.
I don't know. Again, I think it was an Alan Woods connection from First Sight Records. We just ended up playing with them a bunch, and they were kind of nobodies, but they were influential. They were nobodies, but everybody liked them. Everybody in the little scene liked them. Because when they first started, they were, well, even now, you know, they were good. They were funny. They were comical. They were snotty. They were good at what they'd done. They would, you know.
They seem like they had an undeniable charisma. Like that's their
Yeah, totally like funny, goofy, just California kids having fun, being on tour in London, like running around, just being goofy, you know, 100%, you know.
It feels like also there's like a sense of it was inevitable with them, like they were gonna make it, like there was
Yeah.
gonna be.
Well, you could tell, even though, like, that's because they had the whole package. The music was good, the vocals were good, the live performance was good, the charisma was good. They were goofy dudes. They'd hang out with the crowd. They were funny. They'd make jokes. They'd be stupid. They'd be goofy. So the whole nine was definitely there. And it's funny, after that tour, I went to California to visit a friend of mine, and they were playing in Newport Beach. Just as they kind of broke, so to speak, and they were playing like an outdoor mall. And there's like 1 million people there, like 1 million kids, college kids, high school kids, whatever, all screaming. I'm like, what's going on? And then I seen Billy. I'm like, hey, Billy. And he's like, what the fuck? You know, he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm just visiting, hanging out with a friend of mine in Southern California, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's getting all the money, like dollar bills signed by him. Hey, Billy, sign my dollar bill. You know, and taking photos of him. And then he starts getting me to sign dollar bills. He's like, this guy's in a band too. Sign his dollar bill. Like, all right. And then, as I say, going back to his record store in Oakland and running into him randomly on the street, still the same dude, you know?
Yeah.
okay, he's the same dude, but everybody knows who he is. But he's still kind of the same dude. And then he, the 40th Street I was talking about at the beginning, they do a 40th Street festival and they corner the block off and they have bands playing. Local bands, like local like bands from Northern California, whatever. And then Billy played one year as he plays in a cover band called the Cover Ups. And it was him and I think the Pinhead Gunpowder 2 or Mike was in the band. And they'd play because they still like playing and they still like playing live and they still like playing small people, but they obviously can't do it. So they're like, okay, we'll play this show and we'll do the cover ups. And the middle aged ladies from Walnut Creek got wind to it. So the streets packed. And then the locals are pissed off. There's too many people here. This Green Day shit, you know? Like this Green Day shit probably has given your kid in high school, you know, football uniforms or
Yeah.
paid for whatever, you know, because they still, even though they make a shitload of money, they still give back to the community, you know.
Yeah,
He
like
bought a venue as well called the Golden Bull. Him, well, I don't know the meat and potatoes of it, but it was the dude from Samayam and members of Green Day bought a small venue in downtown Oakland called the Golden Bull. So they could do this, so they could play on a Tuesday night under a different name and there'd be 10 people there just because they like to play on a Tuesday night instead of playing in front of 50,000 people in the stadium. They want to break it down and play in front of 10 people that don't know who they are, which again is what you influenced as and what you grow up for, you know? And the fact that you get turned around by a record label and have to play ballparks and arenas, not your fault. Yeah, you'll take the money. Yeah, you'll take the production. Yeah, you'll do all that. But again, if you're a punk rocker or a musician, you can play in front of 10 people and get the same joy out of it. Why wouldn't you do it?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I can respect that. You know, there's no throw away the green M&Ms and we want Jack, 4 buttons of Jack on the rider. You know, they show up in the old cars, they play, and they go home. They drive into the Oakland Hills, into the $5 million mansion, and go to sleep. But again,
Yeah, like as much as like, I got into this music because of, Sonic Youth and hearing them. It was really Green Day exploding and kind of giving me the handbook and the how-to guide, like being like, hey, we were on Lookout Records. We're influenced by this band called Operation Ivy. Here's this band called Pansy Division. Here's this band called the Riverdales. Here's this band called Sam I Am. Here's this band called Jawbreak. Like they just kind of like laid it out for
yeah,
me
it
as a kid.
steamrolls. Yeah, it
Yeah,
steamrolls. And then you want more. You know what I mean? Then you
yeah.
get Punk USA, and you want more. And then you want Crimp Shrine, and you want 15, and then then you want to go to Gilman.
Yeah.
You know, and you go to Gilman, you're like, this sucks. I don't want to go to Gilman ever again.
I saw the Gilman show I saw was Capitalist Casualties, Artemis Pyle, Fat Day, and At the Drive-In.
Okay. We rolled in 25 people thick on skateboards, and it was spaz, lack of interest. I can't remember who else played, but we're all circle pitting. And we were with this little Hispanic kid. We were staying in San Francisco, and there was a grip of us staying in this skater's house. And there was this little Hispanic kid, didn't know nothing about punk rock or nothing. We go, wow, we're going to Berkeley. We're going to this show. He's like, can I come with you? We're like, yeah, come on. And we were fucking with him the whole time. And we get to the show. And we're like, okay, we're going to dance. Hold our skateboards. So we throw basically 25 skateboards at him. So he's standing there, 25 skateboards at his feet, and we're all running around in a circle pit to spaz.
Uh, did you guys like in England at the time, like when Jailcell Recipes is getting going? Did you guys have to contend with much in the way of like Nazi shit and like any of that stuff? Because like there's a tipping
Nah.
point of that hitting, I guess, in the early '80s, right? Like where it just seems like it fucked up a lot of shows.
Yeah, in the early 80s, but again, it was kind of like isolated. It was, I'm going to kind of say it was kind of like the same as the early rave scene, whereas you got a flyer, you had to call a phone number to get the name of the venue or know somebody who knew somebody. It wasn't advertised, you know? Like Screwdriver would be playing this shitty pub in the north of London on Wednesday afternoon, but you had to know somebody to know to go. So it wasn't advertised, and if it was advertised, then the AFA would show up, the Anti-Fascist Action would show up, and cause hell, you know. So in that aspect, no, it was underground as it could be, you know.
But there's like I guess it's earlier certainly, but the Poison Girls, there's stories about their shows getting attacked or
Well,
uh
that was all
the
the down south thing too,
yeah.
because there was a lot more skinheads, a lot more Nazis down south. You know, where remorses and your brutal attacks and all your the Cockney, all whatever's, you know. And then all them No Surrender comps and the Gods of War comps and all them bands were all London, Essex, Kent. That was all a London thing. I don't. Well, North there was what's the dude called up North? Skullhead,
Well,
Kevin Turner.
there's also we're the dentists from I guess it's the middle, but like Leeds,
What were they called?
the dentists.
Oh, I don't know about them.
They were the ones that I guess were the first band the National Front backed, and they were, I guess, kind of around the same time as Gang of Four and the Mekons and Scritti
Okay.
Politti were kind of going at the Fenton. And when John King from Gang of Four was on the podcast, he talked about a night that they were all at the Fenton and it got attacked by Nazis, and they had to kind of fight them off. And certainly there's like stories about Sham 69 having their gigs busted up. When the Go-Go's were on the podcast, they said their first tours in the UK with the Madness and the Specials, it's proto, I guess, National Front involvement, but just so many kind of bonehead skinheads
Yeah.
kind of fucking up shows back then for them. And I think Coxbar, like people have been on the show and talked about how it kind of just hits a tipping point that a lot of those older bands just broke up and stopped playing shows because there were just too many boneheads showing up and it became an issue. But it's fascinating, I guess, like in the same way that there's sort of this, undercurrent of underground punk that rises up as the gang stuff gets too heavy in LA. There's like this sort of DIY hardcore scene that just seems like it was just so far removed from these older bands that were contending with these Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really had any first-hand experience of any of that, you know, which is probably a good thing now. But I know friends that did. You know, PT from Under Siege Productions with Peck, who done all the Planet X gigs. He was involved in that, and he used to get in minibuses and drive to shows and get flyers and try and fight the dudes. And there was definitely his influence on that kind of thing. But that's as far as I go.
So when did you actually move to Philadelphia from?
Oh, many years ago, 1999.
So after you kind of like, because you guys stopped, you break up jail cell recipes, what, 91, 92?
92, I think the last record came out. And the last show we ever played was in Dublin. Jamie's like, I'm over it. We're like, okay. And we all went our separate ways.
You guys played Belfast too, right?
Yeah, we played Belfast. Amazing. With Force Fed. Do you remember Force Fed?
Oh yeah, that record's fucking sick.
Yeah, we played with Force Fed. We played Belfast a couple of times. But it was Will and there was Belfast and Warzone and Gyros and all them.
We only played one time in Belfast, and the show was like okay. We met some guys that like saw the Outcasts and like saw
Okay.
the Stimulators when they did their tour over there and talked to them about that and stuff. But yeah, like I really didn't get obviously a fan of some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that comes out of there, but only the one time being over.
Yeah, first time we went over, it was during the Troubles, you know,
Hmm.
which was crazy. Uh, and we got stopped in the street by the police. Where you going? We need all your passports. We're all crammed in the back of a van. Okay, on your way. Okay, and then we went to. There was a collective called the Warzone Collective, and we met a girl called Julia who kind of ran the Warzone Collective, and then stayed with people from Warzone, and then they had a community cafe called Gyros, and a gyro was an unemployment check from the gyro bank, and that's how you used to get your unemployment money, was through a gyro. So they call the cafe the Gyros because all the unemployment kids would hang out there all day, and it was green. The gyro check was always green, and people used to laugh. What's green and gets you drunk? A gyro. you know. And then people say, "Can you lend me a fiver?" Why? It's Gyro Eve. You know.
Yeah.
So we went over, and then we met a bunch of BMX kids because I rode BMX for a little while, and then Dave and Alan were big on BMX in the band. And there was a guy called Will Smith who has a lot to do with the new record coming out. Uh, he does a BMX magazine in Northern Ireland called Dig BMX, and he's a huge influence on BMX, but also a huge influence on shows back then and a huge music dude. Will was the first person, I've known Will for years. Will was the first person that ever bought a CD online that I know of, and was the first person to ever drink water out of a bottle. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "It's bottled water." I'm like, "Just drink it out the tap." He's like, "Oh, this is different." And then I'm sitting at his house in Belfast once after Jailcell, after all that, because it was close. We used to visit. He'd call me on a Friday evening when I was living in Liverpool, and he'd be like, "We're coming over tomorrow. Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right. We'll see you in the morning." And they get the ferry over from Belfast to Liverpool. They come over for the weekend. They go record shopping. They go to a gig. They go back to Belfast. So we do kind of do the same. We go to Belfast and we'd hang out with them. And then we'd hang out with a guy called Gary Sloan, record dude. He was in a band called Unsound.
Oh, sounds very. They had records, right? On Sound. They had a record.
Like a couple of a 7 inch or a couple of 7 inches.
Yeah.
So Unsound. So we played with Unsound, Force Fed, and Jailcell at this massive venue in Belfast. And again, it was great. It was packed. Met a lot of people that I still speak to today, you know,
Mm.
and a lot of people that I like to still speak to more than I actually do. So Belfast was always great. Dublin was always good. The promoter in Dublin was a guy called Niall. Again, salt of the earth people. And they would always cite that if people would actually get off their ass and go off the main island, like Fugazi always went, because Fugazi was always a little bit more radical than the other bands. So Fugazi, every time they played England, they'd want to go to Ireland because of the political state, because of the politics and the history, you know? So, you'd having a vegan lunch with Ian Mackay in Belfast. Can't be happier, really, can you? You know? So them dudes were starved. I think them dudes were starved for a scene. They made their own scene. and it worked out for them. They screen printed their own flyers. They started their own bands. They started their own magazines. Like they started their own cafes. They had their own venues. Like more power to them, and all going around the troubles, you know. So we thought we had trouble in Liverpool dealing with the Scallies. They were dealing with the cops, and then the Protestant and the Catholics getting called out for what street you're walking down, depending on your religion. You don't get any more fucking hardcore than that.
Yeah, like the level of violence, like just reading about it. Jake Burns came on the podcast, so I was just kind of like, boning up on some history, and then just hearing about the serial killer gangs that were going around, just like sectarian
Yeah.
based gangs of just like they would just grab you off the street and just kill you because you're a Catholic, or like it was just yeah, it seems like a really horrific time. And then you talk to it punk and the end of the Troubles, like it just feels like culturally they're just so tied together, and just like the role punk had for youth in Belfast particularly is just immense.
Well, you're totally rebelling against everything, you know?
Hmm.
Need to plug this in. It's what? Who's in power? There we go. Of course, it's the wrong one. There's like 9 million power cables.
Well, we can wrap up now if you want to, if you're
No, I
good.
need to talk about the new record.
No, I do that in the beginning and the end.
Okay,
I
so
do a wraparound where I hype up the record and tell people where to buy it and stuff, and direct people, and then we put links in the description and stuff. So there's no pressure to, unless there's like something in particular you wanted to get to, but like don't feel there will be like a hard sell for the record at the beginning of the episode.
well, the record's basically sold because there's not that many coming out. So it's basically sold and it's totally remixed. It's not re-recorded. It's just remixed because the first version's an awful recording. So it's remixed and it sounds great. The best thing about it, though, there's a guy in Japan that wants to release a bunch with an OBI strip and a Japanese translation on the back. And I am fucking hyped about that. Just because I like Japanese records with OBI strips. And the like I have a bunch, and I buy Japanese records just cause. Oh, there's a Gary Newman record with an OBI strip. I'm buying it. Stupid
Yeah.
stuff like that. So the
Or the
fact
Discharge record, to go back to Discharge. The Discharge
I
record's
got one of
OBI.
them, the VAT
Yeah.
one with the
Yeah.
OBI stripe. I got a Disorder one too. I got some Toy Dolls ones. And then it's just weird stuff that pops up that you never even knew was released. I got a bunch of Jam 45s, Japanese ones, with the Jam written in Japanese. Amazing. It's like a whole different ball game on the covers and the translation and everything. Fucking fantastic. You've been, it's just bizarre.
Oh, it's the greatest. Like
I've never been and I always want to.
I was there with a few times with the band, but I really lucked out and did that wrestling TV show a couple years ago, so I got to spend a month there.
Oh,
And that's when I got to see Gauze, got to like go to a disc union sale, like all the great sort of like punk rock bucket list items. I kind of got to check off my list because playing shows there, I only got to see like hotel rooms and subways.
But apparently, like people tell me, it's the closest place on planet Earth to being on another planet.
Yeah, like it's definitely like just like the most, like my kids ask me all the time, like, what's your favorite place you've ever been to? And I'm like, well, it's definitely Japan, just because every day I felt like, and granted, I'm covering wrestling and playing music there, so I got a very kind of like a special look at things and a very kind of like niche look at things. But yeah, every day I'd wake up like, oh my God, what adventure awaits me today?
Yeah.
And
Even just getting on the train or buying something from a machine or,
yeah, like, and then also just the moments of just incredible, cross-cultural connection because of punk rock with people, and like being in the store and talking to someone about a band, and just like, and then also meeting kids from all over the world that had come, especially for the Gauze show,
Uh-huh.
and being in line and just like being with kids from Brazil or Mexico or like Europe or something that had flown over there for this show, and you're all like bonded by this like shared
Yeah,
love.
the goofiest, stupidest teenage angst shit you ever discovered, and now you're here 30 years later still doing it with kids
Yeah.
from 6,000 miles away. Amazing. That's why I dig it, and that's why
Well,
I'm still digging it, and that's why I'll always dig it.
well, it's funny
Because,
because like here I am like interviewing, Green Day, well, Bill, like Pin and Gunpowder, but sitting there talking to Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day, and we finished the interview, and the first thing he does is goes, "Do you know the band Jailcell Recipes?" And he's like telling me about how his kid has just gotten into Jailcell Recipes, the other day, and I'm like, "Yeah." Funny thing is, like last time I hung out with Robbie and told him the story about when you, me, and Jello Biafra were all hanging out together at that show in Oakland that time. And, my friend Allison Baker's there who, God, like I grew up with in Toronto. And it's just like we're all connected through this like
yeah,
weird little genre of music
yeah.
that, sometimes there's 10 people in the room. Sometimes, it's Green Day playing to
Mm-hmm.
40,000 or something.
Through Carry On Oil, or through Discharge, or through JFA, or, just dig it.
Well, anytime, Robbie, you want to come back on here and talk about life in the USA or the UK, you are more than welcome.
All right, sounds good. And I think I'm going to run out of power. So I love you and I leave you.